Hello, and again, welcome to the Aperture Science Computer-Aided Enrichment Center.
Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. Take two. My name is Fazz.
I'm Rich. How, compared to the other week where you tried to mix up the delivery of that line, how did that one go?
I mean, that was
getting the giggles before you started.
It was better than take one that I just did. Jesus, no one needs to know what happened there, so I would have offended some people, I think. So anyway, hi everyone. Speaking of our podcast, we've recently had a mention on IGN UK podcast through an email that I sent in, which was quite nice.
Well
so, I listened to one of their podcasts because I listened to their podcast, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna say something," and I did. And I also noted that they said that week they'd only had one email that week, so I was like, "Oh, I want to send an email because I might get it mentioned." And then they were like, "We had loads of emails this week," and I was like, "Oh shit!" But then they did. I said that my favourite use of gravy was cheese, chips, and gravy. That was a very rushed answer. It is a very good use of gravy.
I mean, I don't think anyone's going to argue.
Yeah. They were really at pains, bunch of Southerners that they are. That is in talking about gravy and, I mean,
getting over that, as a Southerner, I'm going to have to ask you politely to retract that.
No.
No, in fairness, since I moved up north, I realised that it is a national sport up here. So, yeah, no. Dear South, we have no fucking idea.
It's weird though, isn't it? I don't understand. I get that there is regional differences in food and stuff, but it's almost like because it's very much a thing. That gravy in our country, it's a split of gravy.
I'll tell you what, right? Like my parents came up to visit a couple of weeks ago. And we had dinner that had a gravy, and I realised compared to how much gravy they had, how high my gravy intake has come since I moved up here. It's like there's just something in the air.
It feels like, I think that people come from the south, and obviously you are a southerner, as pointed out. That is in it feels like you guys see it as initially as a sauce that is almost, you have a dollop every ketchup, whereas if it's not swimming with gravy, then what is the fucking point?
For Southerners, it's a condiment, not a lifeblood.
Yeah. I mean, if I died in a vat of gravy, I'd be pretty fucking happy. Just accepting of it. When
sweet, saucy embrace of death.
I'm sharing this externally now, but nobody knows the internal pain that when somebody makes me gravy, and it's thin and shit. As in the amount of pain honestly, I'm screaming internally with pain. It needs to be a good thick gravy, as in that if you left it for a minute, it'd get a skin on it. That's what I need to know.
Getting sentience.
It would crawl out of the jar. But we had a mention on the podcast, and that made me think about actually a question that you didn't respond to, which is fine, so I'm going to put you on the spot anyway.
Okay.
Just about favourite things we've mentioned loads of times on the podcast before, that is in maybe videos or on YouTube, and you're well laud in that, and I like to listen to quite a few gaming podcasts and stuff, just things that we've kind of come across over the last few years and stuff that we enjoy
recommended
listening to.
Reading.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Right.
IGN UK, one of those podcasts that they're, obviously a big podcast, IGN, and I really enjoy listening to them, and I just had a couple of sort of other thoughts about some others that I'd started listening to recently. WTF Famicom, what the Famicom, is a podcast that I've started listening to a little bit recently. Those guys are quite fun, and that's a very similar vibe to ours. Two guys just sort of talking for ages about things that aren't video games before they
Gravy.
start talking about before they start talking about video games. Another one I come across recently is Chat Tsunami, who's a chap from Scotland, and he did a similar sort of thing as us. Like, he started up and he's got loads of followers now and loads of listeners, which is great. But very down to earth, lovely, chilled out vibes about
nice.
gaming, films, like probably even more things that you'd be into, more Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, and dice rolling games, and
Nice.
that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a couple of things that I've listened to recently that I'd recommend picking up if you like gaming podcasts. Like as in that would probably be more accomplished than this shit show. Anyway, if you want to find something better,
it's made with love, like a good gravy.
And my last one is Remember the Game as well, which I've mentioned a few times before, and that's Adam Blank, comedian in Canada, and he's got, he now has a livelihood coming out of that podcast, and the family of podcasts he now produces around that. He does a Simpsons podcast, he does retro game podcast, future facing gaming and stuff like that. So, but he's really good, and I take some inspiration from him, that he's just kind of like quite funny and sweary. And I like those things in my life, so try and put them into this podcast as much as possible. So hopefully, anyway. But yeah, just sort of share them. That is on the podcast vibe. And what are you? Because I know you watch a lot of YouTube videos.
I was going to say I am a YouTube dweller. Fun fact: I virtually listen to no podcasts.
That's fair enough. Why is that? Time or just?
Yeah, and I'm also lousy at multitasking. Like, I don't like to have, like, I know a lot of people would say put a podcast on whilst they are, playing a game sometimes, or doing the washing up or whatever. I prefer to focus on stuff, or I'll have music on. So, occasionally you need metal to get you through some gnarly washing up.
You do. Yeah. No, that's fair.
So
Metal! Plates.
Exactly. Yeah, like nothing for practicing your sort of thrash, guitar picking chops on a pan.
Yeah.
So over on YouTube, shout outs to Highlight Reel. So it started originally on Kotaku and then became its own thing. It's basically just a roundup of clips from video games, be they great, be they funny.
That was what Fiona was on, you said.
Yeah, my wife managed to get one on there. Yeah. So we'd always recommend Outside Xbox and Outside Extra. They used to, way back when, pop up on the Xbox 360 storefront type stuff, doing little videos and stuff like that. Eventually became their own thing. And I just find them really funny.
Yeah, good.
Sega Lord X. And various other ones that are usually good at doing sort of deep dives in stuff. I think Metal Jesus is probably in that kind of bracket as well. Digital Foundry do really deep dives on tech stuff.
So was it Digital Foundry? I think you mentioned the Wipeout episode, maybe? I think it was something like that, where they did a history of. And that was really good.
Done quite a few like proper big documentary ones.
I think I'd be really into that.
Mud Prince as well did a lot of they did a Bullet Heaven series, which did it for Shmups and Shmup Junkie as well, and Shmups on Switch, and there's a bunch of like specialist ones that you got to tip the cap to.
Imagine you had to close the door and go into a zone on that one, did you?
Yeah.
I'll be out in 2 days.
I think when you're talking YouTube and game stuff, you've got to shout out to Classic Game Room when it comes to retro stuff. I think without that, so much of the rest of it would possibly have fallen by the wayside, because that really demonstrated that it could be done and be popular. And then you get into a load of other bits and bobs. I've got some fighting game community ones floating around on here. Particular highlight is Event Hubs, which is probably the closest I have to a podcast that I listen to. But they will do an hour or so talking about Street Fighter stuff and various bits and bobs around that. So again, like relatively deep dives into particular subjects, almost borderline documentary, some of it. And that's a quick canter through. I've definitely missed some people, but
no, that's good though. You were on the hop on that. I sort of asked and you just did it all there on the spot.
I have my subscriptions list handy on YouTube.
That's something I don't do really as often as I should do. Subscribe to things. I just kind of just watch videos and then eventually they turn back up. If that makes sense.
I've tried to make. I think it was probably a pandemic era type thing where I started trying to make a point of subscribing and following people that I was interested in, as it were. But as well, I think the next step would be starting to look at like Patreons and stuff like that, because I know was it Yahtzee who did the zero punctuation stuff, and his lot ended up forming, what was it, Second Wind, and they're still doing the rounds, and again, highly recommended. But I know damn well that for the amount of hours worth of entertainment I've had out of them, I should be supporting them financially. And like I've said before now about buying season passes and friggin' t-shirts for dumb stuff, like I feel like I should. I've got a bit of disposable income. Yeah, fair's fair.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, when someone sort of says, "Oh, do you want to, do Patreon or something?" and you kind of go, like, for whatever. That's the subscription thing with me. Like, as in, I kind of recoil a little bit, and I don't mean to. Like, as in, I'm just like scared of, I don't know what, like, isn't it going wrong or something, that isn't like, not like as in like I'm going to lose money or anything, but almost like, when you invest your something, you sold something, like, imagine next week they'll be like, "Oh, we're shutting the podcast down." I'm like, oh.
Well, I think that's where I'm kind of.
But then they're more likely to do that if I don't pay.
Well, that's the thing. I think I'm coming at it from the other end. I would be reluctant to necessarily pay for any of it up front, but all of those people that I've mentioned, I've been watching stuff from for quite a while now. Like, they've more than earned it, and it's me that's been slow off the mark, and I really should start literally putting my money where my mouth is.
Do you pay for YouTube Premium?
No, I don't.
Well, then therefore you've watched the adverts and therefore paid via advertisement, still, maybe. Like, I don't know how that works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's kind of my point, and it still feels like I owe them something now. Yeah. I think they've got to that point. Don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of people's stuff that I've watched in passing, and it's just not engaged me. But the ones that I've stuck with that have been drawn to for a reason, I am increasingly feel like I should be trying to do the honourable thing.
But it is a weird world that we live in, where it's like, so nearly all platforms that we consume things on now, that is in, there is a free option, if you will, that is in, like, which is always heavily inundated with advertisement and things, but it is there. So it's like, you still have the choice whether you want to you want to use that or not. Like, I don't think I understand what you're saying. You feel like you've got some sort of debt to them because you've had so much content from them. But at the same time, if the option is there to enjoy it free with advertisements, for example, that is in, then you don't have to go down that path either. Do you know what I mean? It's so difficult. That is in.
I fully appreciate that, and I think that's my kind of my thinking is the fact that I have enjoyed that free route for so long, and for some of these people, it's not like I've watched for a couple of weeks and I think it's really fun. Like, some of these people, I've been watching this stuff for years. Like, they've definitely, at the very least, I should buy a t-shirt or something, find a way of supporting them somehow.
Yeah, and that's fair. Like, as a mid-30s person who gets a good wage, like, as in, like, one that is sufficient enough to have, a house and enjoy some things like home comforts, such as retro gaming and things. Yeah. The amount of times I would spaff like £5 on like a bet on like the golf or the horse racing or football in a week. Like, as in, like, for example, my betting, what's it called? I can't remember what you call it now. Where it's set to £10, so I can't bet anymore. And like, as in, so, and I'm like, I should set that at 0 and pay somebody that's done something for me. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, rather than like doing something stupid like that. So, it's a fair point. I do like drinking though, and I am drinking Desperados right now, and I will never give up drinking. So don't make me not drink. Like, I like to drink.
But for one fewer Desperados, you could have kept a YouTuber and pay.
I do not care. Is it like, they don't deserve it. The Desperados get it. But yeah, I especially at the moment when now I'm on, like, currently I'm on a bit of a diet. And like, like I was saying to you before the podcast last week, I was like, saying like I'm on the diet of just not having sweet things, but I've replaced it with copious amounts of booze because it's summer in the UK, and I'm like, I'll just have a beer because I can't eat. and I'm extremely angry about it. I'm so angry about it. My mood is swinging around at the moment because I'm not eating as much sugar as I should be.
Keeping the levels top.
Yeah. So, back to that IGN UK podcast email then, and I mentioned something on that which will give away, which already has given away, what my pick for free play Fortnite this week is. So I could have went, I'll try and shit you up and change direction and stuff, but I was like, fucking hell, what's the point of that? I know, that's ridiculous. That is so
lots of effort.
Yeah, so you know what I've played this week. So should we start off with yours to, if you don't mind? Just to kind of, have the excitement. What could it be? What's in the box? What's in the box? Maybe, right. And then you kind of know what mine is anyway. So yeah.
Okay, right. So in the last episode, right at the end when you asked about shoulder buttons.
Yes.
And I started waggling my trigger fingers at you.
Yeah, no, terrifying.
And you said, "Oh my god, they're fast." Like, wow, I've never seen anything like that.
I don't remember being that effusive.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah. Blinded by the speed of my hands.
Yeah, because you poked me in the fucking eye.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd put those trigger fingers to good use. You remember light gun games?
Mm.
Yeah, I played Typing of the Dead.
Cool. I mean, I have only recently learned about this, and I was very excited by the concept of reading about it. So this is awesome. I know nothing really about it, but it's really cool. So
this was, I think, originally in the arcades. So it's a version of House of the Dead 2, in which you type at zombies to kill them.
Yeah.
What's kind of endearing about it is that it's in universe as well. So the character you play as will run around with like a little Dreamcast on his backpack with a not quite Duracell battery above it, and he has a little keyboard on like braces in front of him. So like as far as the game is concerned, you are absolutely typing.
You are actually doing it. You're actually doing it.
It came out on the Dreamcast, came out on the PS2. This was the Windows version from the year 2000, which one would argue is quite retro.
Yeah, Windows 2000.
I also feel quite old now. I remember that new year.
You were probably on AOL at that point.
Serve.
Actually. Really? Yeah, nice. Good choice.
So on the PC, it's abandonware. So you can go pick it up for free, and with a bit of tinkering, you can get it running. Kind of like last time when I had a bit of a caveat with my Sonics and my Master System set up and all that kind of stuff, because it might explain some of the bugginess. Again, it's abandonware. It took a little bit of legwork to get it running. There were some crashes. There were some bugs. I'm reasonably confident that it was my setup rather than the game itself. So there is something weirdly fucking endearing about how ludicrous this all is, this game. And I think if the game had, had the cutscenes and they were well acted, very slick, and had gun-toting, muscle-bound lunatics running around blowing zombie head off, and you were typing, I think it would feel really weird. But the fact that they put the keyboards in the game, the acting is abysmal in the best possible way. The lines are ridiculous. It just dials up the kind of campy schlock that you get from House of the Dead anyway, up to about 15, and it's great. It's really, really fun. So it is an arcade game, and it is arcade difficult, even though you are typing. So the way it works is you'll go in, you can choose from various chapters, like where you start, apart from the last one, which is locked.
Okay.
So depending on how difficult you want it to be from the get-go, you can kind of tailor that. But you go in and, at the very start, the words will be relatively straightforward, and then they'll get longer, they'll get more ridiculous. You end up with phrases.
So what do you mean by that then? So it tells you what words you have to type. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So a zombie will come towards you with like a word, on it.
All right.
And then you have to type. And as you type, as you hit the keys, there will be a gunshot sound and a letter will fall away from the thing.
Oh, cool.
And so you have to basically do that.
Yeah.
But, you know, depending on the situation, and if you're saving a hostage, you have to try and do it a little bit quicker, or you might have a challenge partway through the level where...
Wait, zombies have hostages?
Yeah, I know, right? So you can sometimes get like pickups. They'll, you know, sometimes they'll give you points. One that popped up quite early was it would be a dictionary, and then shortly afterwards there'd be this little bit where you had to take out, say, 10 zombies in 30 seconds or something like that. If you pick up the dictionary, it will make all of those words a similar theme, right? So I played it one time through, and my theme was all words that were like awesome, cool, sweet, and all that kind of stuff. And then my wife played it, and they were all parts of the body, but like really obscure ones, like esophagus. And like, she's like, I don't even know how to spell esophagus. Like, let alone
no one
type
does.
it in
OES.
an emergency.
Fucking ridiculous. Come on, guys.
So you end up with like weird sentences as well, like eyelashed together, and all that kind of stuff.
That would freak me out in some sort of zombie weird way.
Yeah. Whoever put the I don't know, dictionary together definitely had a sense of humour as well, because you'll have like all sorts of like sexual innuendo and stuff like that as well, and like just odd asides, a couple of Monty Python references, stuff like that. So yeah, they knew damn well what they were doing when they put all this together. The
one thing you could say about House Dead game, regardless of whether it is this sort of type of game, or you know, a general, you know, arcade, or the Overkill that I played in the Wii, they always have a good time. You just have fun constantly.
And I think that's what's kind of impressive with this, is that still comes across.
Oh, that's good. Then.
Even though you are just typing at zombies. So like the
typecast.
You'll go through, and when you get taken out, it'll give you a kind of breakdown of like your typing accuracy and speed and decision making for like which zombies you try to take out first and stuff like that. And it'll give you like a little chart, and you can gauge your skills. There's also mini games so that you can practice stuff, and it will try and basically teach you typing skills, like touch typing skills. So it'll teach you about like anchor points and where you should keep your fingers for like maximum coverage of the keyboard, and give you like little mini games to go and practice and things like that. And it's weirdly just like helps add to this like oddly endearing package, I guess, ultimately, because it is utterly ridiculous. It's utter lunacy, and yet it all hangs together quite nicely. And I mean, it's abandonware. You can go get it for free. There is Typing of the Dead Overkill, which you can get on Steam.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I've not tried, and I might have to at some point, because I definitely have more fun with this than I thought I would. Yeah. Because I, had heard of it a long time ago, and thought, oh yeah, that's kooky, isn't it? And then finally had a chance to sit down with it. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, like I get why people are still talking about this occasionally. Like it's definitely got a bit of character to it. And I can't think of anything else that quite does this in the same way.
To take such a well-regarded light gun arcade franchise and to do this with it and be confident enough to do that, and then also be knowing enough to put like the character with with the keyboard in front of them and stuff, just so confident and brilliant. Just always showing their balls in the House of Dead franchise. And they're doing it brilliantly.
So this was what was it? Sega and Smilebit, I think, put it together at least for the PC. Yeah. And I tell you what, like, and this only just occurred to me just now. It feels weirdly Nintendo-ish. It feels like a kind of, you know how Nintendo will take a genre and do a Nintendo on it, and it will kind of come out the other end, and you go like, oh, right, I never knew it could do that. It feels like a Nintendo-esque spin on a light gun game. Yeah. And to that end, I'm kind of surprised we don't see this kind of thing a bit more often. I think they did like a, just spotted my note here, I think they did a version on like iOS on your phone, like Flick of the Dead or something like that. And like it's that kind of thing that I can imagine if you've got a new device with like some kind of input method that needs teaching. I can imagine it's the kind of thing, like even if you just had a really stripped back version as a little mini game and perhaps made it a bit more family friendly, I could see popping up various places.
I would love this to be in primary schools. Like, as you know, we're teaching IT today, or how do you type? How do you touch type? Well, here's some zombies.
Yeah, like genuinely,
I know esophagus now.
the game wants to give you the time of day to improve your skills, and it makes that very, very clear. And it's that just helps elevate it, as far as I'm concerned. Like, it wants you to learn. It wants you to be better. It wants to give you the tools to do that. And I think there's something really, really commendable in that. So yeah, like, I mean, there were a couple of hiccups, like I say, bug-wise, crash-wise, but I'm reasonably confident that's because I was trying to play a 24, 25-year-old game on my computer and all that kind of stuff.
It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, it still looks good. Like, it still looks good, yeah. So, yeah, like, colour me impressed, I guess.
Good. I mean, yeah. Solid 8 out of 10. There we go. Just going to come out with it.
Yeah.
I feel like you said, you've been more impressed with that than you thought you were going to be going into it. And I was entertained by your review of it, and it was very clear as well where like what the game's about. So yeah, I like you said a little while ago, would like there to be more of this, or of this ilk. Do you know what I mean? Like, just something a bit, just
something a bit different.
I love when video games just kind of go off on a weird tangent where they just pick something to go, we've got this great thing, but we can make this, we're going to spoon this into it because we think it'll work. We know it's fucking crazy, but we're going to have a go at it, and it just drops and lands like amazing like that. And I'm like,
that's
totally
exactly it. And it is weird, and it's the fact that they lean into it, and they committed to the weird.
Yeah.
To the extent that they had the characters running around with Dreamcast backpacks and keyboards. And even, like, there was one point where I played through it, and the main character, it's normally in a suit, and then I got to the end of the first chapter, and I can't remember what I had done different this particular time, but for some weird reason, he was now a zombie. Like, and it wasn't addressed by anybody.
Yeah.
It was just a weird little Easter egg that for, I don't know, a particular thing that I had done or not done, or a path I'd gone through the level, meant that my character at the end of that chapter was now one of the zombies.
It happens to us all.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was just such a fun little throwaway, like, oh, yeah, no, whoops, kind of thing. But it was done for nobody but me. You know? Like, none of the characters acknowledged it. They all carried on like nothing was unusual. Yeah. If anything, it kind of landed this weird little urgent subtext, some of the lines about having to do stuff quickly. And stuff like that. Oh, yeah, before the rot sets in. Yeah. So, yeah, like, it was a pleasant surprise.
Awesome. Cool. So speaking of things that are done a bit differently then, so a first-person shooter that isn't a first-person shooter. So at this point, you already know, so I am going to be reviewing Portal, but also Portal 2. So as part of the Portal Companion Collection that came out on the Switch in 2022. Yeah. Have you played Portal?
Yes.
Have you played Portal 2?
Yes, I have.
Wonderful. That's good. That's really useful for this because, I know that when I picked this up, it was £6 in the sale on the Nintendo Switch shop, and to see both of these games regularly in some sort of order, usually Portal 2 ranked higher in top 100 games ever. Like they're nearly always, Portal 2 is nearly always there. Portal there or thereabouts. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, so, and I've always wanted to play these games, and I've had the capacity to do so. So Portal came out in 2007 in the orange box.
God, 2007.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, only 7 years after Typing of the Dead, and that came out as in the orange box. So with Half-Life 2 and Team Fortress. And I've got the orange box actually at home, and I still haven't. I think I said on the podcast where we did the top ranking for our birthday, top ranking games, and we did the draft. I'm going to play Half-Life 2 at some point because that's always regularly in there as well. So to have two games that come in the top 100 games ever quite often in one collection is pretty impressive. Like, as in,
it's a hell of a collection.
Yeah. Team Fortress even gets a little pat on the head, so just for being there. But yeah, so Portal 2007, Portal 2 2011. But Portal 2 came out as its own entity on PS3, Xbox 360, Steam. So I've always had the capacity to be able to play it, but to see it for £6 on the Switch shop, something that came out in 2022, I was like, right, well, I'm going to gobble you up, like, because I'm so excited to do this. So much so that I completed Portal 1 in one sitting. That is nice. 2.5 hours I got through it in. It very interesting to see that of those 2.5 hours. So this is going to be difficult to kind of get. I'm going to have to hop around spoilers a bit because there will be people that, like me, of one of the people in the entire population. Like, as in, there might be a couple of people out there who've never played Portal. Like, as in,
just don't tell us about the cake.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I think I'm going to have to drop a few spoilers in here just to be as effusive as I need to be. So please don't get angry at me when I do. Or if we go kind of like, I feel like there's going to be bits where it's a little bit spoilery, but actually that it doesn't really matter. I don't think it'll necessarily affect your enjoyment of the game, even if you've never touched it. Because I think I knew quite a lot about Portal as a Portal 1 and 2 as an entity, even without playing the games. And that's almost from experience of sci-fi in general, and also kind of like just being around being a gamer. That is in so
the fact that it's Portal.
Yeah, exactly. So but like so of that 2.5 hours, the last hour of the game is the last level of Portal. It's a bit weird, really. That isn't. I was almost like I was pootling through it quite quickly, and I was like, oh god, like this game's really quite short. Like, as in, but then that last level, like, as in where you are, this is where the spoiler kind of comes a bit. You're escaping from a facility, like, as in, like, like, as in, that is very much its own game almost. That is in the start of the game is like your training levels. That is in almost getting used to the idea of what Portal is. So to backpedal a little bit, then you wake up in Aperture Science lab as a character, unnamed character at the time. You find this character is called Chell. I think that's kind of, I don't think it's ever named during the games, but unnamed character. You wake up and it's in this apparently sort of sterile environment where there are no other humans. There are just sort of what looks like, I guess, robotics working around you, and you have a guide called GLaDOS. Or GLaDOS are probably the best thing to do. I'm doing this, like, even though I know fine well that you know about it really well, I'm trying to describe it like, like sort of you've never played Portal before. Like, so you wake up and GLaDOS introduces you to the concept of portals in general. So it is first person, and the idea is that you go through the blue portal or the orange portal, and you end up at the other portal. So let's say you go through a blue portal and you end up coming out of the orange portal. Now that might be right beside each other in a room. It might be across a room. It might be on the ceiling of a room next door. And that's the first part that you get your head around. And that's like sort of first couple levels, just dead easy sort of introduction to, in this world, there are portals that you can teleport through. Wonderful. Immediately I'm like, immediately without even touching anything else, I'm like, this is great. Then it starts to introduce things like, so you get companion cubes that will hold buttons for you. And the buttons are then used to open doors. So you might have to go through a portal to go and get a companion cube, drop on a button to then be able to go through a door. That is, again, it's just it's a puzzle game, obviously, as I'm describing it as. And you're not really told necessarily why you're doing these things. That is, it's almost just like you're being guided by GLaDOS, this computer robotic voice who's telling you this is what you should do. And you start to sort of, and then you do the next thing, which is you get used to, then sort of you understand that portals, you can carry some sort of sense of momentum through them. So, for example, if you drop through a portal and then drop through the portal again, you go a bit quicker. So it's almost like you can use gravity to your advantage to be able to catapult yourself across a room. And then eventually you get a portal gun. Now, when you get the portal gun, I hate that I'm describing this like a baby, because there'll be people listening to this podcast now and you're looking across the room and you're thinking, fucking hell, this guy, like, isn't it taking until now to realise how good Portal is? But I don't care, like, isn't, this is me being so grateful that I'm coming across this game or these games right now, like, is in this collection. So you get a portal gun, and being able to drop a portal on, you can only drop it on specific walls, which I would call, like I say, so maybe they look like concrete versus, say, metallic walls. Let's just call it that. And you can only put a portal in these walls, but you use that as part of the puzzle to be able to get through these rooms. So you can start to put the portal wherever you want, almost, where it is feasible to do so. Mm-hmm. Which means that you have this ability to crack a puzzle in kind of not infinite amount of ways, because there are only certain ways you can get through a room that is in certain walls and stuff, but every single angle will be different for every single player, almost. That is in, so you can land a portal on a wall in a certain way, and every single person will have a different experience, like, even if it is just a minuscule sort of difference, that is in, but having that control over your game in 2007 must have been mind-blowing. In 2024, I'm still mind-blown by it. And like, it's just like, it is crazy. So you start to get through these tests that you think, like, I know fine well that from all my experience of sci-fi, that this is going to go wrong at some point. Like, as in, so a nice, mild-sounding robot is always going to try and fucking kill you, or is not helpful. They're not nice. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know from... So the game, and I was just thinking about this while you at the start of the podcast, really, that is in, the game has a lot to owe to Alien. Like, is in, and it's very much feels like your character's a bit like Ripley, and actually there are cyborgs in Alien, for example, that that is in the mistrust of technology and those kind of things. Like, it definitely feels like that sort of vibe where it's like 100 years in the future, this could happen to you, and don't trust any fucking robots. That is in. So you start to sense that going through the game that, like, is in, GLaDOS is your guide, but GLaDOS is not friendly. And that's probably as spoilery as I can get, without sort of like, completely going into the ins and outs of it, like, as in, which I'll go to when we get to Portal 2. So it doesn't matter anyway. Spoiler coming up later on. But yeah, if we're going to take it as separate entities, even though I am reviewing the collection, I want to be clear about that. Right. I am reviewing Portal 1 and Portal 2 together here. Like, as in, Portal 1, its strengths, it's got very clean, crisp, no HUD. Like, as in, so you are just literally, it's just you and a portal gun and the room. There's nothing in your way. So all these first-person shooters that have got lots of different things going on the screen, just completely strips that back, and you feel some sort of zen purity with that. Like, as in, you feel like at one with the facility. That is in, and that's great. I kind of sort of think that if there's a wall that is portable, then it is portalable. Yeah. Like, as in, as in. So, like I said before, you can kind of do, you can crack a puzzle in a certain way. It's a really good workout for your brain. And I've unbeknownst to Rich here, that is in. So, and I will drop these in a little bit later on. I have picked up about 10 of my favourite GLaDOS quotes, and I've dropped them into the pod as an MP3, so we'll drop them in later. Let Rich have a little listen, a little, like, reminisce about that. But the dark humour / underlying threat of GLaDOS, sort of as she starts to sort of malfunction a bit, is just, I know I've said it 3 times now on the podcast, that is in just pure sci-fi genius. That is, it just that's exactly what you need in a near future feeling game, where you feel you just feel that uncomfortable feeling where you're like, everything's built by humans, so that's why it's kind of got that underlying dark humor to it. But the reason it's built by humans, and it can and will go wrong. And they do that so well. So yeah, that's great. It gives you that feeling. The future is just scary as fuck. Like, everyone's terrified of the future because no one knows what might happen. Everything's so Black Mirror. So yeah, it's it just does that really, really well. But also, and obviously you alluded to before, the cake being a lie thing, that is in around this facility where you start to see things unravel a little bit. Like, they're just slight little sort of like almost innuendos that is in not the sexual kind, but that is in little ways that they just prod you to sort of say, look around this corner here, something's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, look at this rust-stained corner over here, something's wrong. And it's so good like that. And it's like, I love when games or any media does that, where it just pricks you a little bit to go, something's wrong here, isn't it? Because you get that feeling as a human being, or at least I do, when I'm walking down the street and everything is normal in life and stuff. That feeling never exists. But sometimes you get that little spidey sense tingle where you go, something's a bit off down this street today. And that's what they get so right in this game. That is in the first game, in Portal 1, they get that, they just knock it on the head where you've done really well there because you get that right. You're making me feel a certain way. And that's brilliant for what seems to be, not, I don't want to call it a glorified tech demo, but it's a 2.5 hour game where you're just, you can tell that the main focus is, look how well our portal gun works. But the writing behind that, they've done a good job of it. Sorry, good is not good enough. A fucking fantastic job of it, and well done, to Valve for doing that. Yeah, produced it.
The pacing of it, coupled with the design, like, it's also efficient and effective. It is a phenomenal piece of work that they put together.
Yeah. So have you got any more points at the moment during Portal 1?
I remember Portal, and I just had a sneaky check while you were talking there. I remember Portal 1 in particular being held up as a really good, if not the only, mainstream example of a feminist first person shooter. Effectively, because you are creating rather than destroying. You are creating portals to solve a problem rather than erasing someone's existence. Point is that for the combination of efficient design, excellent pacing, great characters, interesting gameplay and all that, like, people have written fucking essays on this, about how all this stuff hangs together. It's that good that it can spark those kinds of debates and thoughts. And it's definitely one that I've always held in very, very high regard.
In 3 hours.
I know.
In 3 hours.
It's great.
Do you know what I mean? It's just and I know a film does that sometimes, a movie can do that sometimes, so why can't a video game?
Well, but this is it.
Not many do. You know what I mean?
But this is what we've said time and time again. I would much rather take 3 hours of something the quality of Portal than 60 hours the quality of something that's just nowhere near it.
Yeah.
Game bloat is a thing, and it's something that happens quite a lot nowadays. And this is why stuff like Portal needs to be celebrated when it manages to stick the landing. Yeah.
So, in terms of Portal 1, rounding that out then, little criticisms I've got, that is in, so just that, for me personally, the last level, if you will, that is in, so you've gone through the training, this becomes, and it's almost like the last level is like, you've done your training, you now need to do this all by yourself, that no one's telling you what to do, and it's scary and it's threatening to your life. Like, as in, so, and I feel like it sounds silly, even though it's a sort of 2.5 hour, 3 hour game, that last bit kind of drags on a little bit almost. Like, as in, it feels like you've got to go through so many different rooms and stuff. Like, as in, and it is almost like you learnt this before, so do it here in a different way. Yeah. You learn how to portal here, so do this like this, which is absolutely fine. But you are talking like 30 rooms. Do you know what I mean by that point on that very last bit? And it does kind of get a bit. And the problem with that is that the design of it is you're in the facility, but you're kind of getting out of the main facility by that point, and everything becomes this same sort of. Weirdly enough, it kind of falls foul of the games of the era. That is, it becomes brown and rusty. Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. It's like, I know that sounds silly, and it feels like I bet people are listening and thinking, all right, it sounds like he's trying to pick criticisms. I'm not. I'm just trying to be like, as in, it's held in this. Is held in such high regard by me. Like, as in, I'm like, what are the things that I kind of felt at the time where I was like, I can see, this here. And that was one of the things that kind of sort of stuck in my head, really. And it was like, little things like, little bugs that you talked about, like last week, for example, in Sonic 2 and stuff. Sometimes like just picking up the companion cube with your portal gun, and like banging it off the steps when you try to lift it upwards and stuff. That felt like a bit like, I felt like I was playing, it sounds silly, I could tell I was playing what felt like it was meant to be a PC game on a console. Like, it's almost I was like, oh, doesn't feel like I should be playing this on a Switch. Because it doesn't feel like it's doing what it should be. They were the tiny little things that is in, and I do reiterate, tiny little things about this glowing sort of game. So, Portal 2. Portal 2 set what seems like 100 years in the future. And I won't go into the end of Portal 1 any further, but you look like you've been in stasis. You're still the same character, you're still Chell. But this time you seem to be getting led around the facility by another AI called Wheatley, who basically is, he seems a bit more affable and a bit more sort of, bumbling than what GLaDOS was. And the reason for that would be that is Stephen Merchant doing the voice on that. And I love Stephen Merchant in general. Like, I love everything he kind of does but I'm not saying he is a one-trick pony, but he does something so well, and that is that bumbling, affable, British servant. Yeah. So really good about helping you. That's great and stuff, and just does that really that thing where you're like, oh, I get this. That is, and it feels like someone's just done a really great job of going, we're going to do an amazing hire into this game, and we know fine well this will just work really well, and it does. It's brilliant. So you at that point, you're being led around the facility again, for reasons that I will kind of get a little bit spoilery. I'm not trying to. Where you go around the facility game, and Wheatley is kind of leading you around, and he explains why you are where you are and things. GLaDOS, the other AI, makes a bit of a reappearance. At this point, the facility is kind of like putting itself into a different orientation than it was in the first game. That's the best way I can say it without sort of saying what's happening. It's amazing to see this facility maneuver around you when you enter one of the new testing zones. That is, and so the walls are getting put back together by GLaDOS and sort of like arms and things and stuff. And that's great. The graphics and the sort of, I guess, the detail around that, the 4 years has been really kind to it. That is in, it doesn't look like that much different from Portal 1, but it just looks so much more polished, and you can tell they've just put more into it. And you would feel glad that if you bought this as a single release game, that you think, actually, they've really tried here. Like, as in terms of length, in terms of how much you get from this game, it's about 8 hours, sort of, so you do get, and again, though, that's a perfect amount, which I'll go into a little bit later. But yeah, that is in, the thing that I love the most in this second game, and again, I can't do it without spoiling a little bit, is the vindictive nature that GLaDOS is back with, and the voice acting and the script is absolutely just sensational. So I'm just going to play for you guys now, some of my favourite lines that, whilst if you played the game, you'll remember them and you'll go, yeah, they're great, or whatever. That is in. So, and these aren't all the best lines necessarily. They're just ones that I picked up and I was like, oh yeah, no, I really love these lines. And some, if you've never played the game, it's a bit spoilery, but actually, it will hopefully be not enough for you want to go and play this game. So yeah, I'll do that now, and then we'll carry on with the rest of the review.
While safety is one of many Enrichment Center goals, the Aperture Science high-energy pellet seen to the left of the chamber can and has caused permanent disabilities, such as vaporization. Please note that we have added a consequence for failure. Any contact with the chamber floor will result in an unsatisfactory mark on your official testing record, followed by death. Good luck. The Enrichment Center reminds you that the weighted companion cube cannot speak. In the event that the weighted companion cube does speak, the Enrichment Center urges you to disregard its advice. Remember when the platform was sliding into the fire pit and I said goodbye, and you were like, no way. And then I was all, we pretended we were going to murder you. That was great. All your other friends couldn't come either because you don't have any other friends because of how unlikable you are. Well done. Here come the test results. You are a horrible person. That's what it says. A horrible person. We weren't even testing for that. Most people emerge from suspension terribly undernourished. I want to congratulate you on beating the odds and somehow managing to pack on a few pounds.
Oh, good. My slow clap processor made it into this thing. So we have that. Okay. Credit where it's due. For a little idiot built specifically to come up with stupid, unworkable plans, that was a pretty well-laid trap.
Yeah, so, just some perfect quotes, I feel like, from GLaDOS at the time that really kind of represent both games well. So that was across both Portal 1, Portal 2. And, yeah, I feel like you probably feel more warmly towards those if you've played the game, but it gives a good idea for what you'd be in store for if you haven't.
Pretty indicative, isn't it?
Yeah. So carrying on then about Portal 2. So they do. This is, and we spoke about this in the last podcast actually about sequel samey, sequel lamey, and patented, and it's almost like so that you kind of think, well, how are they? Whilst the story is evolving and is shit hot, like as in it's awesome, like as in it's completely Portal 1. There doesn't feel like there's a lot there, even though they do a really good job of nailing that weird sci-fi vibe. Like as in Portal 2 really drops a story in again without really explaining what's kind of going on, like, and keeps you on the hop and sort of uncomfortable, and but then you start to piece it together a little bit. But yeah, in general, like as in mechanism wise, you're still early on you're still just using your portal gun, which sounds like it sounds like, oh, you're still just using your portal gun, like as in, but there's nothing new to it. And then the game takes a massive twist where you get put into a different situation and a different environment completely, and you end up discovering new abilities effectively. That is something that would be, along with the story twist, things like light bridges, lasers, and types of gel that are a bit like paint. Like you basically you kind of like a bit of a paint gun effectively, where you, and again, it's not in your gun. You don't pick it up as ammo. It's almost like gel that's dripping down from the ceiling that then you redirect using portals. It's so clever. Like, I cannot understate how fucking clever this game is. So these types of gels, and they all just fit in seamlessly. There is one part, and it's quite a late level actually, where there's a gel that you get that gives you, you paint it on any surface, and it gives you a portable wall, and you and when you get what's going on in a level, that feeling that is in the endorphins that flow through you when you go, oh, I need to paint this wall over here, put a portal there, so then the paint's flying out of that portal through another portal, and it's dancing across two pillars that are going up to the sky that then mean that you can then portal across it. It just, oh my God, so good. It's just genius, absolute genius. The plot twist at that point as well, like, again, it's one of those things where, like, with your experience in sci-fi, you kind of know it's coming. You kind of know that the carpet's going to get pulled out from underneath you. But they still do it. They still do it, and they still do it really well. They just land it really well, and you're like, fair enough. That is I might have sort of foreseen that something will have happened where it's like, because at that point, you're like about 3 hours into the game, you go, this just feels like Portal 1 again, and then they just go, no, it's not. Here you go, and you're like, oh yes, fuck yes, I've got some more time with this. And then you get J.K. Simmons. Entering the fray as this sort of third voice as well. And again, a body you never see, a person you never see. At this point, my criticism of the game is that you get GLaDOS, then you get Wheatley, which is your Stephen Merchant voice, and you get your J.K. Simmons voice. It's all very, all of the commentary in this game is all very throwaway and sarcastic. Like, all of it. Like, it's into the point where it's like, it becomes a little much. Like, as in, almost like, as in, I know you're kind of looking at me thinking, no, you're talking shit. But like, as in, if you do go back and play it, and I think this is just the way that I played it, because I played Portal 1 and Portal 2, played all in like about 3 days flat. Like, as in, it was just like a lot of that in the second game, and a lot of portaling. So much portals. Portal, bloody portal. Like, as in, Jerry, you just, like, as in, you're just, like, as in, you do get to your point where you're like, oh, I've done a lot of Portal. It's like, I've overfaced myself with Portal.
Kind of feels like it's a you problem.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to say. That is a me problem. That is a trying to consume all of Portal all of once. That is,
there's a lot of Portal.
Yeah, you would lose your mind in real life, and I almost lost my mind in real life. That is in. So, but yeah, I do stand by the criticism a little bit that you kind of get the same sort of sarcastic, dark humour jibing at you like all the way through the second game, which kind of like becomes a bit of a blend. And while all three voices are different, they're all saying the same sort of thing to you.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I'm trying to be a little bit picky with a few bits where I'm just sort of thinking, this perfect collection for me, like, as in what are the things that you could say that maybe after 10, 15 years, maybe, people haven't picked up on, or, like, as in, I'm not trying to be different or anything, but I'm just thinking, what are the things that actually, for me, went, oh, that, that wasn't necessarily a whole landing. But yeah, and you kind of get to the end of the game and it has a really good ending, and, you just think at the time, like, oh, one thing I wanted to mention as well was the end credit songs on both games are just like spectacular. Like, just, again, brilliant script writing and wonderfully sort of, executed as well. But you get to the end, and the feeling I have is, I don't want to lead you down. I'm not going to say it. I want to wait for you to score it, because I don't, and then I'm going to say what I was going to say, because I don't want to lead you down a certain alley. But at the same time, I do want to say you can just sense that almost like the developers would have put it down and just sat back and been like, I've never been so fucking proud. Like, as in, it's just like you just sat there and gone, that is the best mic drop. That is everyone's like, oh, mic drop this, that's the mic drop. Like, those two games together are the fucking mic drop in video gaming. That is in my word. That is in, I had the best 3 days playing that on my Switch. Just like, and sort of like, I'd be like, and the thing is, having it handheld, that is in, I imagine, like, you could do on the Steam Deck now, that is in, just sat there in the corner of the room, like, me and Sally were watching, I don't know, fucking Clarkson's Farm or something in the background or something like that, and I'm just there, just portaling away, like, just feeling so good about myself. So that's my review of Portal, what is it, Companion Collection on the Switch. So nice. I'm really, really glad I got a chance to play it like I did as well. Like, as in, it kind of came to the point where when I saw both of them together for £6, I've said it like 3 times now, for £6 on the fucking Switch shop, and I'm like, I can play this in my lap and just, enter video gaming nirvana. And there it is.
So, I mean, Portal 2, for me, from what I can remember, and it's been a while since I played it, my wife played it more recently because I made her play it. Because
rules for marriage.
Yeah, basically. But it's one of those things where, from what I remember, like, I think, if anything, for me, Portal 2 was just a touch, and I mean like an hour or half hour, maybe. The margins could be that fine. A touch too long.
Yeah. I agree.
A hair too long. Whereas that first game was, like, for me, like razor sharp by comparison. And don't get me wrong, I still loved it to bits. Still do love it to bits. What I was wondering, though, for Portal 2, was there a co-op mode?
There was. Sorry, I should have really added that in. So I did have this in one of my notes for the podcast, that I was unlikable as Chell and had no friends like her. So at one point during the week, I told Oscar about what I was playing, Oscar, my 6-year-old, and he was like, I want to play that Portal Gun game. And I was like, yes! We're in a fucking co-op, boys! Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up, because there is a co-op section. And as far as I know, do you sound like you know more, so therefore you can do this part of it?
Well,
I've heard great things about it, and you can do some really fun shit.
Yeah, basically, like I haven't played as much of it as I would like, because again, I threatened my wife with it and we didn't quite get around to it. But you basically play as a couple of robots from Aperture, and yeah, it's portal gun action times 2, and you're having to like help each other out to get through these levels and stuff like that. So again, like it feels like a kind of,
it's audacious to have that much, that many portals, to have to think about that much physics.
Well, exactly, and the level design. You know, you were saying about the gel and stuff like that. Like they managed to put all this stuff together in a way that isn't going to break the game. And then to be able to go in and bring in your laser bridges, your lasers, your gels, and then go, oh, actually, why don't we just have 2 portal guns? And then put an entire mode dedicated to it in, is really impressive. So I think for my part, and I did go into this a little because I have played them and I have enjoyed them. Like I was already, like my kind of scores were already going to be clouded by that, because of course they were. So in my head, we're talking about the difference between it being a 9 or a 10. And that was why I asked the question about the co-op.
Oh, right, okay.
Because like,
do you think that matters, do you?
I think the other points that you've mentioned around pacing, or the fact that, you know, the second game was very much more of the same, and considering what we were saying recently about sequels and stuff like that, like for me, Portal 2 is a great example of how you approach a sequel.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those things that you were pointing out collectively still weren't necessarily enough to bring it down from a 10, considering the overall quality of everything else. I think they're valid points, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's enough to bring it down. However, if they'd gone in and stripped out a pretty significant part of the game for some people, I think perhaps that could have. Note to self, look to see if there's mod support on the PC version. I bet that's fun. So I'm leaning towards 10 out of 10, because I know we've always said that 10 out of 10 is not perfect.
No.
But I do think that Portal and Portal 2 are definitely, you know, top 100 games of all time material.
Yeah. We've always said it's kind of life affected in a way.
Yeah.
And so that's you know, that's where I want to go with that, really. The fact that it's so matter of fact that I'm like, oh yeah, 10 out of 10, yeah, you know, so it is those things together as well. That is in, and I know I was complaining, and I know I was sort of saying like, you know, played them all at once. That is in, but that as a collection, that is in. My man, do you know what I mean? That is in, and the alley I was trying not to lead down was that the level design reminded me very much of how good the level design was in Hotline Miami. And that was, you know, the 10 out of 10 that I sort of said this year as well, that it's just like, you know, and how I felt about that game is how I felt about this game. In the same sort of sense that the claustrophobia, in a what is certainly when you get to Portal 2, that is, in there are wider caverns that you were in, that you get a real sense of scale, that you are a minuscule speck on the planet as a human being, but you're still within this claustrophobic situation as well. And they do such a good, and like you say, I don't think that the level design on these games will ever be bettered. I mean, it probably will be, but for, you know what I mean? It's just like, you know, it's hard to see how, to go, and I'm not giving it a score for this either, but to go back to 2007 and to do this as well, like, you know, like it's just, like I say, it's audacious. It really is. And
I think for me, a big part of why I'm quite happy sitting here and just being 10 out of 10 is
whatever.
I played the Aperture desk job thing on Steam Deck recently, which is like a good half hour dip back into that kind of Aperture world. Fuck me, it was so nice to be back. Like for half an hour. Like, and because it's effectively like a kind of tutorial thing for Steam Deck, like, again, it's impeccably paced, has a couple of cracking jokes in it, a couple of really dark bits and all that, and it just ticks so many boxes, but in like a half-hour sprint. And I would much rather spend half hour of playing through that than watching some shit on telly. And to be back in that world, even for just half an hour, I would happily do. And I think that is probably one of the highest compliments I can give it.
Yeah. Would you? And it's very hard. If someone if they announced Portal 3, it's coming. How would you feel about that?
On the one hand, I would be really, really pleased because it's Portal. It's been a while, and all that. Like Valve don't seem to put out too much of their own games anymore or anything like that.
Yeah, they're doing other stuff, aren't they? Can't really. They're just they're busy doing other things apparently.
Yeah,
it's the excuse.
And I think it feels like the story they wanted to tell with it has been told now in a satisfying way. So, for my tuppence worth, if I was Valve, seeing as Half-Life 3 has basically become a running joke because no one's ever going to see that, it's either do Half-Life 3, or if they do a Portal, I wouldn't necessarily call it Portal 3. I would give it a different name and do it as more of a spin-off. Yeah. Kind of like with Aperture Desk Job. You know, I think that's there's more to be found down that route. Yeah.
A Valve World sort of thing.
Yeah.
This is the
maybe
kind
a VR type thing.
Yeah. This is the kind of thing where when something's so good, I don't want any more of it. I don't think. I feel like it's just. That's a lie. I want more. I want more now. Give me it to me now.
That's the thing.
I really want more now, but in my heart of hearts, I know fine well that what you'd have to do to make that happen, do you know what I mean? Like, isn't just to make me feel the same way. It's like a drug. It's like a rush that is in the. You'd have to give me something with a different kick.
That's it. Different is the word. Because I think if you were
is that going to work? I don't know.
I think if you were trying to do the same thing, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to land it because what you did originally was just so masterful. Like spiritual sequel, sure. And the reason I mentioned about modding earlier is I dimly recall something somewhere about a modder putting in like a third function on the portal gun that was like time or something like that. And like something like that. Yep. But I think I would like to think rather that Valve would make the time to sit and coldly evaluate their options, and I don't think they would go off half-cocked on making a Portal 3. I really hope that they would sit there and go, well, are we actually going to be able to knock people's socks off? Yeah. If we're not, let's not do it.
Don't do it.
We don't need to do
That'll
it.
be why there isn't one right
we
now,
run Steam. We can basically print money.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to do it. Let's not do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I think it's one of those ones that now it's done. Let it stay done in its current state, and then if you're going to do something, do a different spin on it.
Yeah. No, cool. Awesome. Right. Well, thanks for listening to us wax lyrical about a couple of different franchises there, and also the podcast and YouTube videos that we talked about too at the start. So if you've got time, pick them up. And yeah, the cake is a lie because I'm not allowed fucking cake right now, and I'm about to go and kick some tree somewhere in anger because I don't have any sugar in me. So it's fine, probably fine. It's probably okay. I won't go full GLaDOS on anybody, I don't think. Right, cool. Thanks very much, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.